Hello and welcome, Steelfur of Steelfur Speaks back again for my regular flesh and blood talking podcast, etc. thing that you guys quite enjoy at this point. We are well into the spoiler season for Rosetta. It's quite exciting. And there's a lot of great stuff coming out. I'm really excited for the set. Didn't get a preview card, which is, as always, frustrating, but what can you do? But Earth cards, are looking really good, and I'm really interested in them. So let's just dive in to the news. So what's happening? Zen is getting a nerf. That's 100% happening. That's been pretty much confirmed. We've got Rosetta coming out. We've got Skirmish season coming out. All these things sort of coming together. But let's start with the whole Zen thing, because we were talking about this before. So if we go to lovely Twitter, we can see Brian Gottlieb at Brian G Fab on Twitter. He's not on Twitter that often because he, people just tweet dumb shit at him. I mean, you ask developers questions, you know you're not going to get an answer. You just want to be seen to be asking them questions, right? Now, that's not to say there aren't quite times when it is good to do that. I've done that exact thing right here, but it's people being like, why'd you make Viserai so bad? Like, stuff like that, which is just, there's no engagement there. It's just you putting forward your agenda in a way that's going to not get a positive engagement versus asking an interesting question that maybe they can talk about. Or you go like, oh, what's coming up in the next set, when you know that they have an NDA. So stuff like that. Brian said he wasn't going to be on Twitter as much in an interview a while ago, but he does still post. And this time he said, just wanted to check in on the interest of getting everyone back into enjoying preview season. So first, we'll just note that he's saying he's felt a bit of people distracted from preview season due to the dialogue that's coming out of skirmishes, and we'll see in a second the recap on skirmishes. I think it's Metagame Minute is where we'll find that. Zen has won a decent chunk of skirmishes because he is, unsurprisingly, still capable of doing these 30-40 damage turns in skirmish as well. And in blitz, of course, that is all of someone's life. So if he goes off, he blows up. And he's also winning in Living Legend. So we've got a hero that's winning in CC, though not winning because he's being hard countered by new and things like that, but winning in Living Legend, which is supposed to be against, some of the most broken heroes that have ever existed. Well, guess what that says about your boy, right? I mean, if Living Legend is the most broken heroes that ever existed and your newest hero is the top right corner, that's a bit of a misstep, right, on design. So, and then, of course, we have Blitz, Living Legend, and we have CC, which we've seen for a while. So Zen is clearly overpowered. Brian acknowledges this. He's like, look, we've realized Zen is too strong. We've talked, I think, in the last episode and the episode before about why that could be and what that might mean, and why that might have happened. The theories about who's testing and whether they're finding the most degenerate things they can do, or whether people are getting distracted by other heroes and that kind of thing. So but the fact is, Zen is too strong in every format. They are aware. They have been for a while. They've been hard at work on solutions. We've already seen one ban, but clearly that ban has not been enough. Zen is not going to overshadow Rosetta. We're all aligned. So this is basically clear telegraphing that there is going to be a ban, right? What that looks like, we don't know yet. Hopefully, it does mean there is a ban, and we're not just looking at power creep in Rosetta that then comes in to beat Zen. That is obviously one way this could be handled, but I think this kind of implies that there is a solution in the works. And I, responded and said basically the discussion from the last episode. So if you haven't watched that, you can go and listen to it. But the discussion boils down to decks like Zen are super easy to disrupt to a certain extent. And they're also quite easy to block out, if their power level isn't capable of delivering these 40 damage turns, right? So the question is, of course, if you nerf Zen and he's no longer capable of going over the maximum block of his opponent consistently, then does Zen just disappear from the meta? And I think that's the real thing that we're going to have to see is, they've been quite good so far at picking a thing that nerfs a hero but doesn't delete them. And I think we would all be fine if Zen just dropped back down to A tier and was still like the best aggro deck, but not dominating the format. But I am curious, when you've got really good control options like Nu kicking around, does that then invalidate Zen as a format? Or the healthiest thing to happen would be that Nu representation in tournaments falls off, because the decks that beat Nu but lose to Zen can now breathe, and then you actually get back to our healthy triangle. Aggro beats something, something beats Nu beats Zen, right? But we'll have to see if we get there. Let's just have a look at some of the responses. So my response was basically what I said last week. Some decks are very good at shutting down Zen. Therefore, if we nerf Zen too much, isn't he just going to be dead if he doesn't have that explosiveness? Someone said, well, what if we just ban Bonds and see Zen with Tigers as he should have been? I'd be fine with that. Like, Zen with Tigers is a fun deck. Yeah, it's mutually exclusive. People can be both excited about new cards and also discussing the impact of Zen. That is true. Dichotomy is easily possible, but I definitely think a few people are distracted from, enjoying preview season by thinking, can this beat Zen? Can that beat Zen? Like, every time you see a preview card and you think these new heroes can't beat the heroes that currently play, that does detract competitive interest in the set, because you're preparing for the next Pro Tour, you're preparing for the next competitive event, and you're saying, well, is it beneficial to me to keep playing Zen or keep playing Nu? Or should I be gearing up and saving some money to buy these new cards that are coming out? And if every time you see a preview card, it's being compared to the best that exists, because Zen hasn't Living Legended yet, then, we're kind of there. So this reply comes with love and passion. Yeah, we know they're passionate about the game, but this statement is very puzzling. If the team has been aware for quite some time and was working on solutions, why were no changes made to LL or Blitz in preparation for the skirmish season? So that is a valid question. So Bonds was banned, and, then they're like, well, if you were aware of the problem, why is LL and Blitz going ahead? So this question isn't entirely fair, because there were bans made. Bonds was changed prior to this LL and Blitz season. That ban was made. I guess the impact of the Bonds ban wasn't as big as they had hoped, and Zen's still very powerful. Is the answer to that question, that they did make a change, but it wasn't enough, right? So it's not like they just left LL and Blitz to sort of go off by themselves. Unless, wait a second. All right, I have to go straight in and apologize to Mr. TC Talk on Twitter. It seems that Bonds was only banned in Classic Constructed. So actually that makes this kind of confusing, because if you accept that Bonds is super powerful, why wasn't it banned in Blitz? So LL is one thing, right? I mean, the whole premise of LL is to let super powerful heroes go into the format and compete with the best heroes that ever existed, and it's not worth it. Like, they don't have a lot of data on LL. They can't, until a large number of tournaments have been run, they can't really actively dedicate a lot of time to playtesting it, because we want that time to go into the main game, right? So that's not a problem to me. Like, the fact that they just didn't playtest changes to LL. I also don't really mind the idea that they just let LL have a proper season with all the cards, and then maybe they'll do some balances later on, right? Because remember, this skirmish season is the first proper Living Legends season that has happened at a local level. So they are getting data from that. But I think the Blitz part is a valid question. So maybe they just didn't think that Zen would be able to get Bonds in his graveyard and use them as much during Blitz. I haven't really looked at the Zen Blitz decks, but I figure, I figure they probably were aware of it, thought it wasn't as big of a problem. But I think if you were going to ban them in CC, you may as well just preemptively ban them in Blitz as well. But, we have seen repeatedly now that Blitz has kind of joined LL, and I think there was an interview around here somewhere where they said, Blitz and LL are kind of getting the same level of playtesting now. A lot of their effort is going into Limited and Classic Constructed, and the other two formats are just secondary. They are fun. That's why Blitz isn't in Worlds anymore. And they're important to the game, but they're not like the thing that has to take up all of the design energy, right? They are a place to experiment and see what happens and be reactive. So that's probably why that decision was made. Shamir coming in with the communication from you, the rest of the team, is the greatest I've seen from any company in this industry. Nothing was going to dampen my excitement for this set, and now I'm more excited than ever. Thank you and the whole team for all that you do. it's not the greatest I've ever seen from any company in this industry. I mean, some of the old TCGs that you played that were a lot smaller had very intimate like design conversations, and a lot of the players knew the design as well, and there was a lot of bonding. I think especially in Ep24 TCG, there was a lot of that kind of closeness of what was happening and things that were going on. But it is very good. I think this is a very good standard. I would like to see this not on Twitter. Now, it does filter down to all the other channels, but I would like to see this posted on the actual website. Either a short post or something like that, because a lot of people don't use Twitter or X anymore, and it is an important news channel for the company, but, it's probably worth just acknowledging this on the website, a small note or something like that for people who are not engaged or are active on X or in the community, but also still being frustrated by Zen. So that's just a note on that. But I do think it is good. It is good to acknowledge the fact during the preview season for your latest set that there is probably some negative feedback about the last one, and just to put a positive, acknowledgement that you're going to be working on a fix and let people know. I think that's a really good thing to do, especially if you note that people are frustrated. It is interesting because it does sort of impact the price of Zen cards and things like that if people know that there's a nerf incoming. So it does have market impact, but what can you do? You have to tell people. I mean, telling people before you make changes is good. Fino, I would rather you guys take all the time you need. Better to have a well thought out ban that solves the problem than a hasty one because you want to make people happy in the short term. Looking forward to enjoying the Rosetta World premiere and pre-releases. I don't agree with this. So I actually think that I would rather they try out a ban, and I'd be happier with a ban that takes Zen down to like B tier, and that then they could relent and take some cards away, because that keeps him in the game for longer, right? I'd rather they overstepped on a ban and then rolled a bit of it back, rather than understepping on a ban and then the hero just getting Living Legend, because I own all those cards, which is my bias. But I also just don't like heroes Living Legending that fast. I think people buy in and they should be able to play that game for a while. So I think that it is, because of a Living Legend system, it's important that they act quickly. They can't leave the hero as it is, soaking up all of the Living Legend points, because that just means that he's going to go away and they don't need to ban anything. So I am in favor of a quick, big ban, followed by a step backwards and a reevaluation if that ban proves to be too more. I think that's the best model for Fab, mostly just because of a Living Legend system, right? Because you don't want... I kind of had this debate not a couple of episodes ago, maybe like 12 or 15 episodes ago. Like, what happens? Like, heroes like Briar that get drastic amounts of Living Legend points in an unbanned, unerrated state, and then proceed to get banned and errated, and therefore no longer be at the power level that they were at. Should those heroes Living Legend at the rate that they were Living Legending before? So Briar got most of her points prior to the ban, and then got the last 100 or something like that after the ban, much slower than the pre-ban Briar had got, because the pre-ban Briar hoovered up Living Legend points. So if Zen comes out and cops a big ban now, it needs to happen soon so that he doesn't get to the point where he's got 800 Living Legend points and even the ban won't stop him from winning a few tournaments here and there. He needs to be balanced as quickly as possible so that he stays on a lower number of Living Legend points and that people can enjoy him in the more balanced state for a longer period of time. Though I do appreciate it is a bit of a headache for the designers, because obviously the longer he stays in the game, the more they have to plan around him. But, that is one of the central biggest problems with Living Legend that we've talked about multiple times, is that it creates design uncertainty about what heroes are going to be legal and what heroes aren't, unless of course they deliberately planned obsolescence retire a hero, like I think they're trying to do with Kano, by printing stuff like what's it called, the one from the last set, that if you've got no cards in your hand, you draw a card. Yeah, like printing stuff like that just feels like they're trying to get someone Living Legend. Sloop figured you guys were on it, but also glad to hear. I mean, it's always good to hear when people are planning to solve a problem. Always baffled at those who don't think they care about the player experience. I don't know who says that. I guess some people probably do. Twitter is a hellhole. But, the designers clearly care about the player experience. It's a big part of their goals. Whether they do the right thing to deliver the best player experience, this is one of the things we discuss on this channel. That being said, are we still allowed to meme? You're obviously allowed to meme. The mantra is always the same when it comes to here. Big trust. Yeah, they do have a lot of trust, but I mean, I will say that we've been talking about... So I personally I'm fully on board with the Fab... I don't know what the fuck this guy's Twitter name is, but I'm fully on board with the Fab 3.0. The designers are getting very good at the game. Heavy and Misfail felt great. But we do still have to remember that this is the same design team that is responsible for Bright Lights and Dust to Dawn, and now is responsible for Zen being massively overpowered. So, they're not losing trust, but there is definitely questions they still have to answer. And I do know of a few people who have sold out of the game, specifically because they're not entirely sure that the developers are always going to get it right. And I can kind of see the point on that. There have been a lot of missteps. As the game has grown more complex, those missteps have become more common. I think where we've ended up in terms of the flexibility we're getting in design, from the Transcend cards to the new rake of discard instant cards and all of this other stuff, I think the game is growing in complexity and maturing in a really nice way. But I feel like, there are warning signs there that things are going wrong, and potentially just that Fab is harder to design than people think it is. I think that might be one of the takeaways from this, is that the formula for Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, or the, draw 6 cards at the start of your turn, gain 1 mana a turn, play a card a turn, even to the same extent like Star Wars Unlimited, which is a variation on that same design, steals the tempo play from things like Ashes, Rise of the Phoenix Spawn, and that kind of thing. A lot of those design fields are explored, so when you print a character that it's going to perform similar to thing. And those designers still make mistakes, like Nadu and all the recent stuff that's come out of Magic the Gathering that's needed banning. So you have to think that Fab is kind of a different animal, and therefore harder to design because it has less evidential proof about what works and what doesn't work, like similar games. So you could copy, and I have seen carbon copies of Magic the Gathering cards appear in Hearthstone and appear in Star Wars Unlimited. So that does happen. So what's Fab copying from? Maybe there's some fighting game I haven't played in Japan that plays kind of like Fab, that they're capable of ripping designs from. I'm not saying in terms of ripping designs in terms of plagiarism or lacking creative fidelity. I'm just mean you have a template for how cards work if your game is similar to Magic. You have a template for what balance is and what sort of effects you can add in. And if you're designing in a green field, like Fab is, you're more likely to make mistakes. And it's that simple. And you have to sort of have Anyway, Flesh and Blood is the last card game I will ever play. I just hope for more consistency across the board. I want to play the game and see the world without too many balancing. Feels bad for myself and others. That's fair. You want a game that works. You want a game that's fair. They have made as many great things as they also have made a few mistakes. I will say the good far, far outweighs the bad. So that's not really a consideration. But, yeah. Is it the last card game I'll ever play? Well, I mean, I've got a box of... Can I pick it up without dropping them all on the floor? I've got a box of Altered right here. I really like Fab. It's definitely the best game that I currently play. Definitely my main game. But like I keep reminding people, TCGs are not necessarily a guaranteed thing. Do you not necessarily trust that you can park your money in a TCG and in 20 years' time it's still going to be alive? And there's loads of examples of TCGs that have died in their infancy. Fab is past that risk. But there's also loads of examples of TCGs that have died later on. And we kind of said, I think I said it 20 or 30 episodes ago, that now, because when I was reviewing all that financial stuff that came out in the New Zealand financial television media when they interviewed James White, and we found out Fab has a annual run rate of 75 million New Zealand dollars, and they funded the Japanese expansion without taking on new capital, as well as things like the office expansion and the staff hiring without taking on new capital. All those things are really great. They're really positive. It means the game has, theoretically, depending on how much Japan cost them and how much they made back, a solid financial footing, which means the game won't die because of money. But what are still the big existential risks to the game? Brian and James, the two designers who are currently at the forefront of a lot of things. Any of the other design team, right? When they leave, or if they get bored, or if they get poached, or if they get sick, or any of the other number of things that could happen, that represents valuable experience making the game that is hard to transfer and create. So the big existential risks to the game now are genuinely people. And, you might say, well, James White loves the game, it's his baby. Okay, yeah, but James is now the CEO of a company that employs, I think it was somewhere around 30 people, rather than the sort of 5-man band that started. The amount of time that he has for design probably starts to shrink at this point, right? And the amount of draws on his pressure. And he might not enjoy being the CEO as much as you think. Also, CEOs get tired very quickly. It's a common known thing that CEOs of startups are very prone to burnout and just running out of energy because they pour everything into the company, and eventually that kind of tires them out and runs them out. So, those are the big risks in the next sort of, we'll say, I think before I said sort of 5 to 7 years. I think now we're sort of looking at the next 5 years or so. We're looking at how well design skill transfers to new designers that they hire. We're looking at how well, we're not going to see this, but these are the things that we try and sense. So how well is James White delegating work? How well is he staffing underneath him in terms of the admin that he has to do and all these kind of things. So, I mean, you see these signs and you ask questions about them. But my point is, like, Fab is at risk. Elphaba died after 20 years because the designers got bored. That's the big sort of milestone for big TCGs dying. Decipher fell over because someone at the company embezzled a load of money. I don't think that's going to happen here. But things go wrong. And my point is more just that it's not the last card game I'll ever play. Let's put it that way. Sorry. Long-winded way to get around the response to that. But it is definitely one of the best ones that I have ever played. And there's a lot of games. So take that away. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate this level of comms directness. This isn't sarcasm. No, I don't think it was sarcasm. Though a lot of what Ian says is sarcasm. This guy's from the UK and he's a known troll. Thanks for this. Appreciate you updating the community. That's cute, but if Zen is that strong, how can he lose to Kano and Nu in CC? Kano can OTK far more than Zen. Also, don't forget we're not pro world famous players. I am way more disturbed by Kano, which is an OG hero. So Kano still existing is definitely a problem. I 100% agree with that. It's kind of a separate problem. Kano's OTK capabilities, but then inability to win enough tournaments is a big problem, I think, for the game, which is why I think they are printing cards that will help Kano Living Legend. I think, we're seeing all these cards coming out. I think they are deliberately designed to help get Kano across the finish line. And I think I'll make this prediction that Rosetta is going to be the set that gets Kano across the finish line, because there's a lot of wizard support. Nothing can my future love of Verdance. I'm with you, brother. 100% agree with that. Verdance looks amazing. Appreciate Team Brian. Know you're going to Ryan on the Light Solution. Yeah, fair enough. They probably will. They've done some good work. Looking for a Rosetta. Token rarity, Brian Go. I don't know what that is. Kudos for checking. I saw friends excited piloting Zen or Nu, but I've had a few friends that have Zen'd enough. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the deck is very fun to pilot, but it is like Ninja decks. It's quite linear. So once you get into the swing of it, it can get a bit boring if that's not your flavor. It's always a bit tricky when the best deck in the format is aggro, because not everyone feels like playing aggro all day, especially aggro mirrors. Like, you just have to enjoy jamming games in again. Is there a plan to move that further before the PQ season? I don't think there is a plan to move the ban restricted list before the PQ season, but that would be a good choice. Might be a bit late now to do that, just because people have been testing for it. If you've been aware of the problem for a while, why sit on your hands? Well, they didn't. They made a change to Zen, but clearly they didn't think he would be as big a problem, as it was. It's not really that bad. Let Zen Living Legend in Blitz, nerf him in CC and LL and call it a day. That's one solution, right? Just let him go. I'd rather they didn't let him go, but I can understand the logic at this point. I wish you could do a better job at testing next time, because you said the meta will be shaped around Enigma. I didn't catch that they said that, but if they did, that is a bad prediction. I have to agree with the guy or the person who's saying this. If you thought that Enigma was going to be the hero that won in Mistvale, then yeah, your testing really does need to be reevaluated. Yeah, you see, this is the problem. I'm still enjoying myself, but I'd be happy to talk gameplay if more than does it die to Zen. So that is the key problem, is that Zen is the best deck in the format. But I will say that this is the same with every single meta we've ever been in. You know, does it die to Prism? That's great, but does it die to Chain? That's great, but does it die to Starvo? Like, this is always the question when the best deck exists. Zen isn't going to overshadow Rosetta. My brother in Christ, he already did. Little bit, but, you know, there's time to wheel that back. You know, I'm really enjoying the art and previews. Some suggestions. Ephemeral cards can't be banished to Art of War. Interesting. There is probably an errata coming, so, you know, thing. I'm not going to go through any more of these. I do want to spend just a little bit of time reviewing the Blitz deck cards from Verdant. I'm loving these Earth Heroes. I'm loving the art. I'm loving the vibes. I like the slow build up to the ability. Decompose is my jam. You can banish 3 cards if you do gain 1 life, so it's a 2 for 6, which is great. That turns on your hero ability. So if you put 6 things in your graveyard and play 2 of these, then your hero ability is online, and you also deal 1 arcane, so that it becomes a 2 for 7. Perfect. This is fantastic, by the way. It's basically a sigil light on the body of a 3 for 7, right? Sometimes you're going to want to gain 2 life and trigger 1 arcane damage. Sometimes you're going to want to chuck a 3 for 7. This is like doing what things like Raging Onslaught did for Bullander, but with Earth synergy and with life gain. It's actually fucking... Sorry, I'm swearing a lot today. That is disgusting. Arcane Twinning, bit of amp. I really like these discard optional effects. Like, it's really fun just to have a flexible card that can do 2 different things. I really like the art as well. It's really fun. Pop the Bubble. 1, so it's a zap, but better. If it deals more than 1 damage, destroy an aura permanent. That's really good. So if you can get a damage off on Prism, you can start eating stuff. Yeah. Harvest Season is good, I think. I think it's going to be good because late game it's going to heal you 3 life and trigger an arcane. So it's kind of the equivalent to blocking 3, but it's actually a 1 for 4, just delayed. So that's really cool. Fienda's Fighting Spirit obviously is going to be huge, regardless of how it gets anywhere. It's just such a great card for her. Pulsing Ether, yeah, why not? And then Fertile Ground, it just looks disgusting, right? Gain 2 life. If there's 4 or more cards, gain 5. Also ping 1 arcane. Yeah, I just gained 5 life. So it's a 2 for 5, but 5 life gain is not the same as 5 damage, right? You know, it can be so much more. Especially if your opponent's like having a setup turn and you play this and they have a setup turn, you've just gained 5 life to use later on. Perennial Ether Bloom sounds great as well. Just 3 or more damage, put it on the bottom of its owner's deck so it recycles. There are so many cards I'm interested in both of these decks. I'm really hyped. I wish I was going to Tampa, but I am saving money, so I can't at the moment, but it's you know, really good. Yeah, I might go to Calling Leon. I haven't decided. It could be a cheap trip. Okay, so most of this thing got caught talking about Zen again. I don't want to talk about Zen again until we know what's happening with that. I don't really want to talk about Blitz. Living Legend is interesting, but yeah, that's fine. Really keen on Rosetta. What's the favorite card you've seen so far? We'll just leave the question with that. Oh yeah, and for avid listeners who are wondering what I'm cooking, I have moved on to Indian food. So recently I've been learning how to cook dal, red lentil dal, and I've been learning how to cook biryanis. So if you have any good recipes for dals or biryanis that you'd like to share with me, do let me know, as that is the flavor of the month that I'm going for. And I'm really keen to learn more. Anyway, this is Steelfur Speaks. Have a great time. I will speak to you all next week. And of course, do like and subscribe. If you have reached this far in the video, I think you owe yourself that, because I'm a great channel and you just listen to me talk for half an hour. So give me a like and subscribe, and you will hear when the next video comes out, and you can become an avid fan of my channel. We have stickers. You know, come to find me at an event. I will give you a sticker if I have remembered them. And you can be a stickered fan of the channel. Speak to you all soon.